Hello, my dear students of class 7. Welcome to the third part of the reading and understanding of the lesson, The Cop and the Anthem. Right? Let's begin right away. Sophie tries his luck twice again, but cops remain indifferent as ever. Alright? Sophie is suddenly reminded of his childhood home and mother and resolves to turn a new leaf. Feeling a hand on his arm, Sophie turns around to see the broad face of a cop. Alright, so let's read the lesson and understand a little more about this. Alright, taking it from the top. Then he came to another cop standing in front of a big theater. He thought of something else to try. He began to shout as if he had too much to drink. His voice was as loud as he could make it. He danced and he cried out. And the cop turned his back to Sophie and said to a man standing near him, "It is one of those college boys. He won't hurt anything. We have orders to let them shout." Okay, so when Sophie tries dancing and crying out aloud and making a loud noise, the cop standing over there looking at Sophie thinks that Sophie is one of the college boys and he is not up to much trouble. He won't give us much trouble. And he also says that the cops have been given orders to let them shout. He said, don't bother them. Let them go ahead and shout. All right. So Sophie was quiet. Was no cop going to touch him? He began to think of the island as it were as far away as a star. Alright, so Sophie suddenly became quiet when he began to understand that no cop was going to catch him and he wasn't going to the island in prison to go and take warmth in the prison during winter time. Alright, so he pulled his chain coat around him and the wind was very cold. Alright, so he had a coat, he pulled his thin coat around him and the wind was very cold. Okay, and then he saw a man in a shop buying a newspaper. The man's umbrella stood beside the door. Alright, so the man who was buying a newspaper in the shop, he had an umbrella and this was beside the door. Sophie stepped inside the shop, took the umbrella and walked slowly away. Alright, so he tried to rob this man's umbrella and the man followed him quickly. "My umbrella," he said. "Oh, is it?" said Sophie. "Why don't you call a cop? I took it. Your umbrella. Why don't you call a cop? There's one standing at the corner," he says. All right, so Sophie wants to get caught. He wants to get caught and he wants to go to Blackwell prison so that he can spend his winter or spend the winter months in prison. So he's doing things in order to get caught by a cop and be put in jail. Alright, so he tries to steal this man's umbrella and then when the man follows him and says, "My umbrella," Sophie says, "Why don't you call a cop?" "Yes, is it your umbrella?" "Yes, I took it. Why don't you call a cop?" Alright, and the man walked more slowly. Sophie did the same, but he had a feeling that he was going to fail again. The cop looked at the two men. "I," said the umbrella man, "that is, you know, how these things happen. If that's your umbrella, I'm very sorry. I found it this morning in a restaurant. If you say it's yours, I hope you'll..." And he pauses. Okay, so this time the man, he starts walking slowly. All right, he doesn't follow Sophie and keep up with his pace. He says, when the cop looks at the two men, he says, "Is this your umbrella?" All right, so if it is your umbrella, I'm sorry because I found it this morning in a restaurant. All right, and he says, "If it is yours, I hope you'll..." He says, "And it's mine," Sophie cries out with anger in his voice. Okay, because this plan also of his fails. All right, the umbrella man hurried away. The cop helped a lady across the street. Sophie walked east, all right? So he walked in the direction of the east, all right? He threw the umbrella as far as he could throw it, and he talked to himself about cops and what he thought of them, because he wished to be arrested, and they seemed to believe that he was like a king who could do no wrong. Okay, so he started thinking about these cops. He started thinking, I'm doing so many wrong things, but these cops are not doing their job well. All right, I threw a stone at the window. I tried to go and eat at a restaurant and not pay any money, and they threw me out, but they still will not catch me. So he starts thinking ill about the cops. He thinks that why have they still not arrested me? Because he wished to be arrested. All right, and they thought that he was like a king who could do no wrong. All right, so at last Sophie came to one of the quiet streets on the side of the city, and he turned here, and began to walk southward. All right, so first he was walking east, and then he comes to one of the quiet sides of the street in the city, and then he starts beginning to walk south. All right, so in the direction of the south towards Madison Square. Right, we already discussed what Madison Square is in the previous videos. So he walked towards Madison Square, and he was going home, although home was only a seat in a park. All right, so he had nowhere to go, and he decided to go home and sit in, and the home that he knew was a seat in the park. But at a very quiet corner, Sophie stopped. Here was his childhood home. Through one window he could see a soft light shining. That had been his living room, where he had spent many happy, peaceful moments. Sweet music came to Sophie's ears and seemed to hold him there. Alright, so while he was walking towards Madison Square, he passed a quiet corner. And Sophie stops over there. Why does he stop there? Because he goes past his childhood home, the home where he grew up in. And he looks at the window, and through one of the window he sees soft light shining. And that had been his living room, right? Where he had spent most or many happy and peaceful moments there. And sweet music came to Sophie's ears, and he did not feel like moving from there. All right, the moon was above, peaceful and bright, and there were few people passing. He could hear birds high above him, and the music that came out from the home held Sophie there, meaning it made him stand there for a very long time, the music. For he had known it well too long. All right, he knew his home well too long. In those days, his life contained such things as mothers and flowers and high hopes and friends and clean thoughts and clean clothes. All right, so when he was a little younger, Sophie was used to all these things. All right, he was used to things like love that came from a mother, flowers, high hopes and friends and clean thoughts and clean clothes. There was a sudden and wonderful change in his soul. He saw with sick fear how he had fallen. All right, so when he sees his old ancestral home where he was living before, he began to feel a wonderful change in him. All right, and he saw with fear how much he had fallen, what a lovely life he used to have, and how he has turned out now. Right, he saw his worthless days, his wrong desires, his dead hopes, and the lost power of his mind. And also, in a moment, his heart answered this change in his soul. All right, so he had this feeling in his soul, and his heart also answered all the questions. It thought about his worthless days, his wrong desires, and whatever hopes he had, which were dead and lost. All right, so he pulled himself up out of the mud. He would make a man of himself again. All right, so when he sees his home, he decides, he gets a change in soul, and he decides to change himself and do something about him being homeless, jobless, and without any food. He decided to do something and make a man of himself again. All right, so we're going to stop at that for today. I hope you enjoyed this part of the lesson and continue enjoying the rest of the day. We will complete the lesson in the next part. All right, thank you for watching the video. Have a nice day, everybody. Bye-bye.